Hello everyone. Today we will start our third day of free lessons of game dev. And let's start. I want to tell you some words about our school at first. About Black Screen AI. This is a project of the IT school programming in Silicon Valley for English-speaking students, founded in 2016 year in California. From this time, we have more than 25,000 online students from all over the world. Instructors and assistants work in companies in the USA, Canada, and Europe. Programs are developed considering the requirements and processes of IT corporations and startups. Students undergo internships and commercial projects. We help students to reach employment. So, as you see, since 2016 year, we have really huge plate of we have really too much offline classes, offline groups with our students, and yeah, you can see the reviews on our YouTube channel from our students that finish classes and work in such companies as Microsoft, Oracle, Meta, PlayStation, Apple, Tesla, and etc. Now we have a free live classes week. At Monday, we speak about who is a game dev Unity expert. Yesterday, we speak about how we was making your first game on Unity, and today, hands-on, build a shooter game in Unity. So, beginner course. I want to speak about this course because it's really interesting and really useful for adults 14, 15 years old. Yeah, after 15 years, you can study this course and have a really good job for future. You will learn the basics of C programming and the many ways it connects to Unity. You will also create a study foundation in Unity development, granting you the freedom to create any game of your dreams. You'll also walk away with 2 projects ready for a personal portfolio. Beginner course Game Dev Unity. Why you need to choose Game Dev in Blank Screen IT School. 100% live classes, not records. That's really important because you can speak with your teachers. You can ask all questions that you need in live sessions. So it's really important. A lot of practice. The best instructors, all of them have relevant experience and working as a game dev in IT companies in USA. Results: strong command of C and its basic constructors, conditional operators, loops, and functions, user input, processing skills, and display of result of the screen, understanding the principles of game programming and creating your own games on Unity using the C programming language, understanding the principles of code organization and structuring, as well as the methodology of developing software projects. The ability to create and customize graphic interface elements, buttons, input files, and lab. Unity 3D is one of the most used game engines in the world. It is also used to create virtual reality. You will bring your first 2D or DD game to life. Shape immersive worlds. Deepen your understanding of game elements. Harness the power of the game engine. Master time control. Breathe life into your game's objects. Empower player actions. Craft an intuitive GI. Fine-tune physics interactions. Launch your game to the world. For beginners, it will be 16 weeks course. Start at the March 17. It will be Monday. If you want to use installment payment, Affirm or Klarna, you should pay $3,999. Program, what we will do. First 2 weeks, building skills, making your first game simple. Then 3-4 weeks, Unity 2D plus C animation creating a 2D platformer. 5-6 weeks, Unity 2D creating a 2D platformer. 7-8 weeks, Unity 3D making individual game, creating a 2D platformer, creating a 3D shooter. 9-10, virtual reality creating a 3D shooter. 11-12 weeks, coding questions preparation, 3D race creation. 13-14, creating a group projects in a team, making an epic RPG game. 15-16, creating a group projects in a team, making an epic RPG game. So we want to make you a present, really useful present, and we give you $800 as a present today. What you should do for this present, you should scan this QR code and you should reserve your discount for $47. It will save. And then your course will cost not $4,000, but $3,200. You can scan this QR code because it's really useful, as I said before. And now I want to introduce you your instructor, Jonathan Hopkinson. In programming for 30 years, programming on Unity since 2012, game dev Unity course for beginners, instructor at Black Screen IT School. So, Jonathan. Hello.
Yeah, hello. Okay, yeah. Sure. Okay. There we go. Hi, everybody. Yeah, a little bit about me. You can go to the next page real quick. We'll start there, I think, in this slide.
Yeah.
Blink. Yeah, do you have the next page? Or I could just start telling. So I started my career, like it says, I started in 1995 is when I started programming. And back then we were doing just little kid activity centers kind of things, like the things that you would have, like they were PC Mac CD-ROMs, and they were little activity centers, that kind of thing. I think if you advance the slide for me there, the next slide, I think there's one of the games. Yeah, this is I found these on YouTube of all places for some of the original games I did. I think this was the very first one I did way back when. You could see how simple they were back then. It was just like click on colors, click on things, stuff like that. So I started with that in my career, and then we did this game. We did some kind of humorous games. I think in the next slide there's another one called Star Warped, which was something making fun of Star Wars, stuff like that. So I worked on a smaller company with all this stuff, and back then we used something that was called Macromedia Director, which basically was Flash and Shockwave before it was Flash and Shockwave, because Adobe bought them and then turned it into Flash, as some of you may have used Flash back in the day, and something called Shockwave back in the day. Well, then, once that stuff, started exploding, we did a bunch of stuff for, just internet stuff. So if you go to the next slide, there's a funny story. This is in 1999 here, we did like this real quick sort of demo to see if like the web game stuff that we worked like we were working on worked really well. So this was this Defender style side scrolling game we made. And there's a really funny story with this because back then, it's a 1999-ish, that time frame, we were just learning about how security worked, and we were a smaller company and we didn't have the best security. So basically, this game, Mermaid Shooter, if you search for it, if there's stuff that still supports Flash, you can find it because we left some ports open and somebody grabbed this game in this weird demo sense that it was in, and it was distributed all over because it was a completely working, fully functional Flash game with there was no company logos, there's nothing on it, because it was just like this tech demo that sort of accidentally got stolen from the internet. So that was fun, back in the day. So we learned, how to protect our websites after that, but that was kind of a funny story. So like, yeah, sometimes if you just search Mermaid Shooter, you'll probably see a bunch of those old sites if they still exist. Because for a while it was probably our most popular game, but no credit because there was nothing there. Anyway, next slide. Let's see, I forgot what's on the next slide. We'll see. Oh yeah. Okay, so after that, like just real quick history. So I got into, C programming and C++ programming. I did some stuff on Game Boy Color and DS and stuff like that. And then fast forward to this, which is probably the most popular game I worked on, which is called Panda Pop, which you could still download on iOS and Android stores. Now, the company I worked for did like the first version of it. And back then I was working for a company that was just a software house. So we would, people would come to us and say, hey, make us this game. We'll pay you so much money and we'll do it for them. And then we'll give them the game and they'll put it on, like they own it sort of, but we just create it. So that's kind of what this was. But this game became extremely popular. Like I said, we did like version 1 of it and you can still play it today and download it today. And you can still see, the stuff that we initially did at that studio. And like I think the team was only like 6 of us originally. Now I think the studio that owns this now has gotten really big. I believe their name is Jam City now. They were SGN when we used them. So that was the most popular game I worked on. And since then I've been doing this is all Unity. And since then I've been doing various like projects for various companies. Next slide, please. Like this one is probably a big company called you might have known, it's called Age of Learning, but they make something called ABC Mouse. And this is a title I worked on that was giving them, giving kids the opportunity to learn how to read and count. On the top right is like one of the counting games, and on the bottom right is one of the reading games. And I worked on both of these, with that company, Age of Learning. And let's see, I think, is there one more slide? I think there's one more on here, unless that's the last one. I was trying to remember. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then True Play. So True Play was the last game I was in, the last place I was working, and they were kind of like a religious type game. And I was on that team I was on just did kind of like I was the only Unity developer on what they call their platform team, which we sort of made. This company did a pay to play service that, once you sign up for an account and pay, you can get in. There's a bunch of games behind this paywall. And I was on the team that did like that main platformer kind of thing to get through the paywall and through like the catalog of games. So yeah, that's my career in a nutshell. So I've been using Unity now since, about 2012. And yeah, that's about it from me, I believe. And I think we're going to jump in and start looking. I think we're going to start looking at Unity now, right? Is that the next thing on the list? If I remember right, yeah. Was the portfolio thing, that's today? Okay, that is today. Yeah, okay, we could jump into this too. Yeah, I looked at all this stuff earlier. Okay. All right, so when you're making your portfolio, like how do you sell yourself to a company? That's a question that we get. That's something that I've done. I've actually been on both sides. I've been an interviewer interviewing people. I've also, of course, been interviewed for different companies. And I think one of the biggest things you need is some sort of sample game, kind of like the slides I presented before, like those slides. Like if you have something that's out there that you worked on, that would be the most important thing because then they could see it. If you didn't have anything like that, you could have some sort of sample code that you worked on or sample project or something. Like companies like to see things. They like to actually see, hey, what did this person do? What kind of skills do they have? Is there anything that I can go look at? Okay, next slide. Okay. All right, so I think the next series of slides here, we probably don't have to address directly. It's about how to install Unity. And I think since you guys made a sample game the other day, you probably already did this. So I believe we can skip a few of these. It's just basically like, in a nutshell, Unity has a hub, they call it, where you download the hub and then you can get the tool and go through it all. And depending on your download speed, it takes a long time. If you already have it downloaded because you did a project yesterday, right now you could actually go open the hub and tell it to create a universal 3D application if you want to, because when we dive into it, it does take a while for it to open. So you could start doing that now. We could just skip this slide, unless we need to cover this. Again, it's installing Visual Studio Community, which is free. It's a free IDE. That's the tool used to code in. I recommend you do this if you don't have anything you already use, because these IDEs that they have nowadays are really great because there's a lot of handy little things they have in there to help coding. Specifically, my favorite is the autofill, which many of you have seen, where you start typing and it will search the code base and start filling in like coding stuff, functions, whatever that's related to what you're typing. It's very, very handy. All right, next page. Okay. Unity Hub, that's what the hub looks like. That's how when it's complete. Go ahead, let's keep going. Let's see, next page. Okay. This is what I told you earlier. Like when you say new project, it says what type of project. I think selected on this one is Unity 2D game. Right underneath it says Universal 3D. That's one you'd pick for today's demonstration. We'll just do the 3D, so it all sets up the 3D environment for us. Okay, and then the bottom right is where the project name and the file location, all that stuff goes. Okay, next page. Okay, oh yeah, this is just this is doing a quick test once Unity opens to make sure your scripting environment is all set up. You create a script real quick from that menu, and then you double click on it and make sure Visual Studio opens, which I think is the next page. Yeah, there's the script. It says new script. You double click on it and you should get that window on the right, which is Visual Studio opening. That'll make sure everything's linked in so you can actually start coding in it. All right, next page. Okay. That's again, just shows you, okay, what this does is if something doesn't work, you can go into the menu on top where it says editor preferences. Excuse me. And if you go to external tools, right there under external tools, see what it says like Visual Studio, blah, 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 blah. If you have some other supported IDE, like I believe, I'm trying to remember the different ones Unity supports. I don't have a list, but if you had it in the drop-down list there, if you had something else installed, you could select it and then Unity would link into that one. That's what that's about. Next page. Yes, VS Code is the one. It's called VS Community. It's Visual Studio free version, basically. Okay, I know the next thing we want to talk about before we dive into looking at a shooter is the suggestions like, okay, when you're going to make a game, what do you start doing? What ideas do you have, for a game? So next slide. Okay, what mechanics do you want to incorporate into your game? Like, what is your game going to be? What height is it? A 3D, 2D? In this case, we're doing a 3D thing. But what else are the mechanics? Are you going to have something that shoots? You're going to have jumping for your character, stuff like that. Think about that stuff because, of course, all that stuff is going to complicate your coding. Next slide. What's the visual style? Again, like this is more, I know we're talking about, game dev in general, but visual style is important too because, if you want your game to be accessible by the most people, you're going to have to support older phones and older devices, and you need to think about that when you create it. Perhaps if you're doing something that's VR, you're going to only support certain levels of VR devices. There's going to be all that stuff because you're going to have to, pick, okay, my game is going to be this good. And then if you target just the really high end stuff, only you're going to have a much smaller market of people buying it, at least at first. Another tricky part about this is, it takes months sometimes to make games, depending on how big they are. You're going to have to think about what your hardware is going to be like at that time. But a lot of times you'll have the hardware when you start making a game, and you'll have a good idea of what the minimum system requirements and all that stuff should be. All right, next one. What unique features should the game contain? Like the concept of the game. So, again, if you're going to make a shooter, there's 100 shooters out there. So what's unique about yours? And let's see next. What game? Okay, I was just gonna say too about the thing, like, don't fall into the trap real quick of just make it say my game is unique because it's gonna have the most awesome graphics or the most newest 4K resolution, blah blah blah. Don't just throw buzzwords at it because there's a development cost to all those buzzwords. Sometimes you have to think outside the box. Like you make something that's cool, like a shooter where, I don't know, you do hand-to-hand combat. There's some of those, but that might be your way to get in. Got it? Okay. What do you call the game? Course name. Okay. All that stuff. Yeah.
Oh,
And this is the, yeah, there's that. And then there's like the salaries. I think, let's see. I think yeah, we could look at the salaries. I believe these, like, depending on your area, they could be, ranges, a little lower, a little higher, possibly on that, you know. So it's been my experience. Salaries could be down slightly. I mean, most of you have seen layoffs in the news. There is like, there's a lot of fluctuation in the game market right now, but I think it's still a pretty big, healthy market, in my opinion. Okay, what's the next slide? Let's see. Okay. Are these jobs? Yeah, okay. I think one of these, okay. Yeah, there is a high demand for game developers, specifically, coding, as well as like people who do art and all that stuff. There's a lot of demand for game developers right now. Yeah, and people get snatched up all the time. It's a big, big market. Okay. All right, I think this is the one for the next week, so I think we can jump to Unity now, unless there's something else, because I believe that was the end of unless we're going to go through the whole thing, and I
yep.
could show at the end. Did you want to go through the whole slides? Okay.
It's more about the course, and as I know, you want to share your display, right? And show us. Yeah, so you can
Yeah,
share.
yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm. Yep, I was going to jump in and just show some quick a
Yeah.
quick little thing we can do in Unity. It should take about roughly 30 minutes, so we should have some Q&A time, I believe. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Okay. All right, so I guess I can share screen, yes?
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's see. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it on me yet? I can't tell. Okay, there we go. All right.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Okay, so we should see Unity now. Okay, so what I'm going to start with is
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show you guys, this is the little quick game we're going to make. Now, of course, since we only have, about a half an hour, it's going to be very simple, but this is what we're going to do. I'm going to play it in Unity real quick. Some of you may not be familiar with the interface of Unity. What we have is like, this is the camera. This is what I'm looking at in my game. This would be the scene. This is like, my big world kind of stuff. And then we have all the libraries, all that stuff. Okay, so this is what I'd actually see on the screen. So in my game, I'm using the cursor keys to move around, and we can see I'm running through this little quick world with all these objects, right? Here we go. So now we could do this in about a half an hour. So, okay, what I'm going to do now is, if you want to follow along, you can. I have this scene. I'm going to open up this one, which is this is exactly what it looked like when you just freshly open Unity. All right. So we have this game, we have the camera, we have all the scene, but there's not much here yet. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go over to the scene here, and we're going to click on the camera. And one of the nice tools is whenever you click on an object in this hierarchy, if you want to see it in the world space, you press F, and it will zoom right into that. Speaking of world space and cameras, just from a game perspective, and to try to explain what this is, the world I'm talking about, that's like the room you're sitting in right now. The room has objects. So this is the world. There's various objects around this world. Right now, there's only a couple things, but there's objects in the world, right? When I talk about camera, that's what your game window, your viewport in your game is actually looking at. It's kind of like in the room you're in, it would be what you're looking at with your eyes. Obviously, if you look out across the room you're in, you'll see curtains or a bed, whatever is in the room, but you wouldn't see what's behind you, but the objects that are behind you still exist. So that's what this is. Okay, so what we're going to do in here is we're going to come up to this hierarchy. We're going to right click and we're going to say create empty. And what I'm doing is I'm just creating a game object that I want to put all my world game objects under, just so in the future I can find it easier. So I'm just going to type it and just say, call it game objects, just for sake of things. Okay, now what we want to do first is we want to create basically our ground layer. So I'm going to right click on here, say 3D object, and I'm just going to create a plane. Because we're doing a 3D game, you know, it's just going to be a plane, right? Because obviously we don't have time to do anything super fancy, right? Right. Okay. So I'm creating a plane. Okay, it's going to automatically put it at 0, 0, 0 in the world. That's the location in the world. And we're going to make it 10 in the X, and we're going to make it 10 in the Z. What that does is it gives us a little bit of space to move around. I can zoom out here, and as you can see, there's our plane sitting there. Okay. And I'm just going to call this ground. Ground. There we go. All right, so what we're going to do next is I created some materials in here, but just for the sake of example, what a material is it's how the 3D object appears in the scene. So I'm going to right click on here, create, and then go to, I believe it's rendering material. Whoops. Sometimes these menus are funny, especially with the delayed cursor a little bit. Okay, there we go. Ah, I did it again. Sorry. I think it's just the Zoom when sometimes Zoom and Unity just have some fun with each other. Okay, so I'm creating a new material. Now, I'm not going to go through what everything is, but we can keep the default settings and we'll just call it like we have green, blue, these other ones. So I'm going to call this one orange just for the sake of difference. Okay, and then we're going to go in here and we're going to take this color and there's this color wheel and you said, what color do you want this? And I just say, okay, I'm just going to make it orange. Okay, there we go. So it has a preview. Now, if you're doing this on your own, you can duplicate that orange one and you can name it, you know, set the color green, set the color red, whatever you want. You know, so I have all these ones in here. For the ground, we're going to make this ground green, so it's slightly different than the example. So what we do is we click on materials on the ground object, make sure the ground object is selected, and the default is just lit, so we want to change that to green, right? Point. And then we'll see it's green. Awesome. Okay, so that's at 0, 0. That's the next thing. Next thing, we want to put some other objects in the world, just so there's stuff we can run around. So we go to create 3D object, and we can pick different ones. I'll pick a cube. Okay, so it puts a cube in the world. You know, we'll just call this cube for sake of that, and we'll make this one red. Okay, and then real quick, let's go see where the cube is in our world. Okay, it's right there. Notice how the cube is actually in the floor, you know, through the floor. We don't want to do that. So what we could do is we could click here, and now we're editing the cube, and we can drag it up. So it's just like that, right? And then just to be fun, we're going to put it like, let's stick it over there. All right, there you go. So, and then let's create a couple more things, you know, create 3D object, and then, you know, how about a sphere, you know, just for something else in the world. And we'll just populate the world with a couple different things. We'll make a purple sphere somewhere. All right, we'll stick that. Oh, whoops, it unselected. There we go. We'll move that up there. Make sure it's up there. Yeah, it looks good. And then we'll stick it over here somewhere. Just, it doesn't matter where. We're just putting them around the world. So there's a couple objects. We create two more here. Another 3D object. Again, the reason why we're using primitives in Unity is just because they're simple, they get the idea across, and we don't have to do any insane modeling. Unity just does all the work for us, you know, especially for a little, you know, shooter thing in a half an hour. Okay, and the same thing, move this one over here. All right. Now, since I'm presenting, I can't see the questions. So, I mean, if someone has an important question as we go, I could pause, but otherwise I'll just keep going. Okay, so let's see. We have our capsule, we have our cube. All right, why don't we just make a
It's a question how to use brushes.
brushes?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what specifically do you mean by a brush? Because I'm not directly covering that right now, so I was wondering what you meant specifically. Okay. All right, so there, now we have, okay, so inside of our world here, now we have our background and we just have all these different objects, right? Okay. Just to kind of, show you how it works, let's hit play real quick and see what we got.
Landscape edit
Yeah.
about brushes.
Landscape editor, I don't know if Unity has a direct way to do it. I know you can do like different models and import them. But as far as like Unity doing landscape stuff, I don't know if Unity does that directly because like from the programming's perspective, I've only just like normally you would have a 3D artist would create your world and your scene instead of using a plane, and then you would just pull it in that way. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's like as far as Unity is not specifically it's not a 3D creation tool. It's like the whole world, the stuff I'm showing you now is just how to put stuff into the world. And we're using simple primitives just so we can dive into scripting quicker, if that makes sense. Yeah, is there other questions before I continue? So what I just did is move the camera up because I guess our camera was a little bit low for the gameplay scene. There we go, that looks good. Yeah, so our camera's pointing at this. Okay, so we have some objects in the world. And one thing I wanted to point out an object real quick is by default, when you create the objects inside Unity, it's going to automatically attach these colliders to them. And that would be good for us a little bit later when, we start to talk about real basic collisions so we don't have our camera run into something. Okay, let me save the scene real quick. All right, so to make our guy move around, what we're going to do in this case is we're just going to use the camera as our player, and we're going to move the camera around the screen because it's real simple. So literally when we move, we're going to be doing this kind of thing and moving the camera and rotating the camera inside this scene because that's the easiest thing to do. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to create a script and look at a very simple script. So we go into create scripting mono behavior. Okay, and we'll call this player. All right. Now, if we double click on this, it should pull up my Visual Studio. There we go, we see player. Okay, what I want to do first is it would be kind of nice if, we had our player point at something specific. So I'm going to type in public, which means it's something that, I want all scripts that know about the script to reference. And I'm going to type in transform. And then I'm going to type in initial target. Okay, so what this is this is one of the ways that you can interact with objects from scripts in Unity. What I want to do here is because it's public, I'm going to be able to drag this script on one of the game objects. Then I'm going to be able to grab another game object inside of here as initial target. Now, a transform, in Unity, we have game objects and transforms, and everything in the 3D world has both of those. Okay, the transform obviously is its 3D position, and it has its properties about its 3D, like its positions, rotation, etc., its scale, all that stuff, right? So what I want to do is I want to make this object, this play object, which I'm going to attach to the camera, I want to point that camera at a certain target, right? Now, Unity has a lot of cool things built in for us. And one of them is what they call transform. Is it? Yeah, I think it's, my typing is not too good. It's that weird delay with, I forgot how much of a delay the running Zoom has on that. Okay. Is it point yet? Wait, what is, oh, I misspelled transform. Sorry. Again, it's this weird delay. It's kind of making typing weird for me. Okay. Wait, is it look at, what is that thing? Yeah, it's transform now. Oh, you know what? I capital. Okay, that is okay. So when I say transform here, what I'm getting at is, okay, so this script is going to be attached to a certain game object, right? Unity has all these shortcuts to get information about that game object in Unity. So when I say transform here, I'm talking about the transform of the object that the script is attached to. This transform up here is the object that I'm going to tell it where to point at. So I do this to look at, right? And then when it says look at, it says what target do you want to look at? And I'm going to say, okay, I want to look at this initial transform. This is not, okay, come on, you're not, there we go. It's not copying all this stuff over. Okay. I think Visual Studio just isn't quite knitted on the laptop. All right, but it should be, okay. Anyway, there we go. So, all right, so now what's going to happen, let me save that script and we'll jump back here. All right, so what I was talking about earlier is I want my camera to point at different things. So I'm going to drag this new script in here, drag it there, right? And now the camera has that script on it, and then it has this open spot about what I'm pointing at. Now, just real quick, I'll show you why I have the console open up here, is because, like, you know, we'll go back here and this is void, right? There's nothing there. So if we hit play right now, what's going to happen is we're going to get an error because that script that I just put on there has nothing in there. So we're going to hit play and we'll see right here, as soon as it runs, that it will pop out an error. Did it pop out the error? No, it didn't pop out anything yet. It should have. Is there a start? That's interesting. Normally it would error right there, but it's not going to for me. That's funny. Anyway, all right. But anyway, if there's an error, you'll see it in this up here. It will show you the error. It will tell you, and what's nice is once the error shows up there, you can double click on it. It'll jump right to the script. Okay, this is making sure that's all there. Yeah, and it's on start. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to have it point, right now it's pointing at the red box. Let's have it point at the sphere. And then we'll see if the code is working, because maybe there's something wrong with the code. Although it should be working. We'll check it real quick. Yeah, see, now it's pointing at the sphere. Okay, so it just decided not to error on us. And then if you could put it at the cylinder, we could point it at that. And again, we're running the game, and we'll look at the cylinder real quick. Okay, there we go. Oh, look, the cylinder's on the ground. Doesn't matter. We can fix that later. Okay. So, all right. Next, we want to make the player move around, right? So let's go in here. And in Unity, when you have scripts, the start is called once. You know, like it says up here, once when the mono behavior is created, when that particular object is created, which should be at the start of the Unity plane. And then update is called once per frame in here. So what we're going to do is we want to add keyboard input because that's what we're using right now. So look at autofill. Okay, autofill's working again. Good. Visual Studio is coming back. Okay, so what we're going to do is, in Unity has this thing called input, which is the class it uses to handle all these inputs. So we're going to use the function called getKeyDown, right? Actually, no, we don't. We want to use the other function. So I defaulted to the one called getKey. What getKey says is it says, okay, is whatever key I'm asking you, is that key currently held down? So then I'm going to type in key code, and we're going to use up arrow, right? Because that's move forward. Okay. That's pretty common in most 3D games. The other one that's also common is the W key. So we're going to say if it's up arrow or it's the W key. Then we want to move forward. We'll call this move forward. Okay. All right, move forward. Now, so reminding again, what do we want to move forward? We want the camera to move forward, so that's our transform. But first, before we want to move forward, we need to establish how fast we want this thing to move. So we're going to add another value here. And the reason why I put it up there is so that in your testing, you can easily just edit it and hit play like we did with dragging the various game objects into that. So we're going to call this speed. Okay. And it's a float. All right. So when you move forward, what we want to do, we're going to have moving, and then we're going to have rotating. So when you move forward, you're going to say transform, right? Dot position, because that's where this thing is on the screen. Okay. We're going to say we want to take that and we want to add to it a certain value. Now in the position is, it's a vector 3, a 3D location in space somewhere, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, we're going to move this in space somewhere, but we want to move it whichever direction is forward, which in case of the camera is what we're looking at. So we're going to say transform, again, transform dot forward. Okay. What that is, that's a special thing Unity has. Whenever you import anything, any transform, it always has some value, some 3D value of which way is its forward, its direction it's pointing. So we're saying, okay, we take the position, we take whichever way you're pointing, right? And we add a certain value in that forward direction. So the value is going to be, we're going to take that vector 3, multiply it by our speed, right? And then we're going to multiply it by a value that Unity uses for an update. The way modern, programs work is it calls this update function a certain number of times per second, right? And we want our speed to be in basically units per second. So what we're going to do is tell it, okay, we want to take that speed and multiply it by time, which is a Unity function that has a Unity class that has all the time values, dot delta time. What delta time means is it's like, okay, it's how much time has passed on this particular update. So like if that update took 1 second, it'd be a full second. If the update took, a tenth of a second, it's a tenth of a second. All right. So we say take our position and add to it, which is what plus equal means, this forward value plus our speed plus our delta time. Okay. All right, let's save our script so it compiles and jump back in here. Now, if I run it, well, first thing we have to do is remember we made that speed a publicly changeable value. So we have to change on here. Look at that. It's going to default to 0. So right now, if I ran it, it wouldn't do anything and I wouldn't know if it actually worked. So let me make sure that that's set to 10. I think that should be a good speed. Okay, so let's hit play. And now we should be able to move forward in the scene just a little bit. There we go. We can move forward. Oh, look, we just went right through that wall. Let's do that one more time. Okay, so now we have to add all the other stuff, turning and blah, 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 right? Okay, let's do this again. So just to check that again. Oh, one more thing. When you're running this in Unity, in order for keyboard input to work, you have to make sure you click here. Like if I click over here and then click back, I won't be able to move unless I click there. So yeah, because Unity will lose focus. All right. So far so good. Let's jump to our script. Any questions in the chat since I can't see it? Or anything we need to stop at? Just checking real quick. Okay, we'll jump back here. All right, so let's do backwards since backwards is pretty simple to forward, right? Now in here, we don't want to be able to move forward and backwards at the same time. So I'm going to capture this into an else like that. Okay, so backwards, we're going to use down arrow. There it is. And we're going to use the S key, right? Because that's one of the famous backwards, S key. Okay. So to go backwards, we're going to do the same exact thing, but we're going to times the entire thing by -1. Now, the reason why that works is because of how vectors work. So if you have a vector pointing at like 1, 0, 0, and you multiply the whole thing by -1, it's going to be -1, 0, 0, right? So it's going to be the exact opposite of forward. Now, if we wanted to make the code cleaner, we could add like a backwards value and have it transform.forward times -1. Something like that would work. But this should work as well because this is going to make what we add a negative value. Okay, so let's check that. Let me just make sure I didn't forget anything from there. Yeah, I think this is the original practice. I did make the backwards value just, so it would look a little better. Okay, but anyway, doesn't matter. Okay, so let's jump back into here and let's make sure we can move backwards and then we'll do rotation. Okay. So now we can do forward and we can do backwards. Okay, cool. There we go. So we're doing forward and backwards. That's funny. I think our camera is not, hold on, we gotta make sure. I think I moved the camera accidentally because it doesn't appear to be flat. No, it should be flat, yeah. We can make that -10, but that shouldn't matter as much. Yeah, that's fine. I don't know why it's moving at an angle, but the forward should be pointed straight. Oh, maybe because we're pointing at the, that's right, when we point at the object, we're not pointing directly, if it's not at the same level, that's what it is. So we should make all this stuff on the same level as the camera. And then even if it's floating, because like right now we don't have any ground collision, so it's going to get messed up. So if we have these things float, well, I think that'll be fine. We don't need to do that. But anyway, we'll just keep that in mind. It might move off the screen, but we don't care because we're not really concerned about that. We're just making the guy move right now. We'll fix things like that later. Okay. So now I'm going to do the same thing, with our key input. Now we want to be able to move and turn. So we'll let the rotation be, on a separate if. So we can actually rotate. So we'll do left arrow, or A would be to turn left. We could also do strafing, but in this case, we're just going to do the standard turning left, turning right. We could use mouse input too, but that's all more complicated. It's really easy to do it this way. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to set the rotation. So we're going to transform dot rotation, or it's actually going to be we're going to use Euler angles here, because Euler angles are much easier to work with than Unity's standard rotation quaternion. It's a big fancy thing. So Euler angles is the simple, 3 angles that we're used to. Okay, so we're going to take these angles, right? And what we're going to do, so on your character, you're looking down the Y, right? So we want to rotate it in the Y. So we're going to say dot Y, and then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say plus equals, and then we're going to do the same thing before. We need a rotation speed. So public float, let's do rotation speed. All right. So we'll get rotation speed in there. And actually, I think it's going to make us do, it's going to make us do the, okay, it's going to make us do the setting, because that's right, that is a structure, yeah, okay. Okay, we'll set that up, and then it's not going to let us directly edit this, but what we could do, let's see, let me see what I did before just to make sure. Oh yeah, okay, we did it that way, yeah, plus equals, yeah, I'll just copy that one. That one looks not a lot cleaner than the other one. Okay, that's right. I remember now, we just did that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to take a vector -1, which is turning left, and we're going to turn it by rotation speed. Same exact thing as before. Okay, and then, so what that's going to do is going to rotate our camera, and then we want to do the same thing as before. You don't want to rotate in both directions. So we stick the else in there. Okay. Right arrow. Ah, how come that didn't work? The return key didn't work. Sorry, I'm on the laptop. I'm normally on the desktop because the laptop has a much better camera. So it's a little bit different keyboard. I think my fingers they're going with keyboard memory on me. Okay. And we'll change this to 1 because we want to rotate the opposite direction. All right. So we're doing A, D, the normal left, right, and left arrow, right arrow. Okay. Now with this, we should be able to move around at will in our little world when we go back to it. As soon as it finishes compiling. There we go. All right. Let's see. All right. And there we go. Oh, we're not. Oh, wait, we forgot to set it to 0 again, right? It's set to 0. Yep, I forgot that. We could set a default value in the script too. If we want to do that next time by setting, we'll jump back real quick. If we set this equal to something, it will default that, to that. So I could say this equals 90 and it would default to that and it would avoid that problem. But it's always nice to be able to have these variables exposed while you're playing around, and you could mess with it and see if you like the rotation speed being fast, too slow, etc. All right. So here we go. And now we're rotating and we're moving up and down, left and right. There we go. So now we're running around our world. Okay. So that's the basics. Now the other thing I was gonna cover, but maybe for the sake of time and questions, maybe we'll just glance at it, which is collision, which I have this other player script before. Just really, really quickly, a lot of times we'll talk through it. When you're doing games, especially small games, you don't necessarily want to use the entire massive like Unity physics engine. If you're doing a full-on 3D shooter, yes, you probably want to, because some of that stuff like needs to be set up in other tools or set up to real life settings. Like in other words, if we're going to do this physics stuff, it would take me an hour or two just to configure it. But what I like to do when you're doing quick things is you can actually use Unity's built-in, collision tools. They have raycast, they have spherecast, they have all these different things. And what I did here is I just wanted to make sure we don't run into things. So basically I added this function called did collide, which says where are we and where are we going to. So it says, did you collide with, we're right here and we're heading in this direction and we're heading in this direction. And then I just had a collision range, which is how far we want to project the raycast. And basically what that will do is raycast is a simple check that just says true or false. So you can say, hey, is there anything in that from this origin in that direction at this distance? And if it returns true, you would say, okay, we can't move. But if it returns false, we would move, which is what this was. So that was the last thing. And real quick, jumping back to Unity, remember what I said earlier? I said all these box colliders and stuff. If we look closely in the scene, we could see that this box collider, we can make this as big as small as we want it. And if we made it bigger, see how that the box set bigger than what we see in there? That is how you would make it so you could make your objects bigger or smaller colliding, is by adjusting these colliders. Because when you cast rays into the scene, it's going to return from these various colliders on these different objects. That's kind of in a nutshell. There's a whole lot more there, but for this sake, and since we only have a few minutes left, I think I'm going to stop sharing there. And I hope you enjoyed that. And maybe I'll jump back to Zoom and we could try to get maybe a couple questions in. Okay. Right, let me open up the chat here. I'm sure there'll probably be tons of questions, huh? Okay.
So thank you so much. It was really so useful and interesting, so exciting. And game dev is really so interesting profession. It's like you do really what you like, because all people like games, and as my opinion, it's a really good chance to complete to make your life more interesting with your work, because you will do what you like, really what you like. So I will tell some words about the beginner course. It's really for beginners. You can have no experience in IT before, and you really can get a great results after our course. So it's for adults, for teens after 15 years old. So as I told before, you will learn the basics of C programming, and the many ways is connects to Unity. You will also create a sturdy foundation to Unity development, granting you the freedom to create any game of your dreams. And you'll also walk away with 2 projects ready for a personal portfolio. It's really important because when you will find a work after course, minimal you should have 2 projects in your portfolio, so you will have it after our course. Beginners course, what kind of games? You'll be able to make anything from a casual puzzle game to a multiplayer shooter game, to even your own epic RPG adventure with the foundation. How many games will be in my portfolio after course? At least 2. As I said before, you also launch your own game. So what you should know to get a first job: portfolio, background check, references, knowledges and skills, preparing for the coding interview questions. As you know, in our school, we include the program for preparing to interview in our course. So 100% live classes, it's not recorders, a lot of practice, and the best instructors, all of them have experience and work as a game dev in IT companies in USA. So we speak about this before, what you will do, because we have no time, I'm sorry. And as I tell you before, for beginners, it's after 16 weeks, you will have a great job. And our course starts at March 17 at Monday. If you want to use installment payment, you should pay $3,999. A few more Klarna. And we again give you a present. Where is our present? Some few words about the course. How long is time? 16 weeks. How many times in a week? It's 3 times in a week. How long do online classes usually last? 1 hour. So 3 times in a week for 1 hour, you will have these classes. It's really nice time to concentrate on your education. So as I told you before, we give you a present, and only 5 minutes left. If you will scan this QR code, you will have a discount for $800. So scan it and reserve it for $47, and you will have really great price for this course. Really great price for have a chance to change your life in better. And if you will pay today, you will have this discount, because tomorrow discount will be less and less and less. It's only for today. Don't lose the chance. So thank you for this really interesting and useful webinar. See you at our classes.
Bye.
See you guys later.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you, Jonathan. Great presentation, although I got just the end of
Thank
it.
you so much. Thank you, Jonathan. And could you please, Yana, make Alexei the host? Алексей, скажи, как передать тебе хоста, чтобы Яна это сделала?
Okay, everybody who's here speaking English, not Russian, we're gonna be switching over to the next webinar in the next couple of minutes. I'm the host, and the next one will be in Russian. So if you understand, you're free to stay. If you're not, then you're free to stay as well, but you might not get much of it. And that will be about FinOps. So yes, please make me a host, whoever is FE.